I'd like to officially welcome all of you to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle. And we are meeting here on today, which is not only Thomas Paine's birthday, it's also the day before Mahatma Gandhi's death anniversary. And we are taking up a topic that was central to Mahatma Gandhi's life and endeavor, and that is the idea of nonviolence under the Sanskrit term Ahimsa. And we are using that term Ahimsa with the idea of choosing not to harm. We have a really remarkable speaker joining us today to kick that off. And before I introduce her, I'd like to ask Maurice to give us a brief reading from Mahatma Gandhi, if you would, please.
Ahimsa does not simply mean non-killing. Himsa means causing pain to or killing any life out of anger or from a selfish purpose or with the intention of injuring. Refraining from so doing is ahimsa.
So the difference between ahimsa and himsa. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, let me tell you just a little bit about Afriye, We-kandodis. We can do this. She considers herself simply a humble servant doing what she is meant to do as a human being. She's originally from Chicago, and she, in 1998, experienced a transformational experience in Ghana. Her family could just tell from her voice over the phone that she had found an inner peace and even wondered whether she was ever going to come back. Her first grandchild was born, and so she did come back. And she brought back with her name Afriye, which means at God's appointed time. She later chose her last name, We-kandodis. And so when you put Afriye with we can do this, it's we can do this. We can do this at God's appointed time. She first visited Selma really in 2004. So she hasn't been there that long. And she went down with her mother, and an elder in the town saw her and told her mother, "Your youngest daughter belongs here. She has work to do." And so that was the first kind of calling that Afriye felt. And she really did not want to move down to Selma, Alabama from Chicago. She resisted it, and yet she just kept getting message after message until she finally decided that, yes, she really did need to move to Selma. She, when she got there after a number of steps, she created By the River Center for Humanity. And this center is in a building that is located side by side with two original structures where slaves were brought up from the Alabama River to be auctioned. And the pits in which the slaves were put during the auctioning is right there in Selma, to be seen still. Afriye leads people through an intense reenactment of the slavery experience that then turns into a healing ceremony where people have the chance to learn, how can we learn from this history to become better human beings? How are we using our freedom? So as a Black woman living in a place where Africans were auctioned off like livestock, her path shows that she has chosen not to harm back, but to actively embrace her humanity. Afriye, we would love to hear from you if we can, please.
Yes, peace and blessing. It is an honor to be here with you all this evening. And I want to start off with a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. As my suffering mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways in which I could respond to the situation, either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I want to start a story from my childhood. My mother's best friend, Miss Josephine, who gave wet and sloppy kisses that landed on the side of my cheeks and sometime on the back of my neck. And she had a way of sneaking up on me that would scare the mess out of me. And she would just start kissing all over me. And I don't know what was worse, her kisses or the smell of alcohol that was seeping through the pores of her skin. And she would hug me and I would fight to be free of her unbearable bear hugs. You see, I was her girl, I was her baby, I was her sugar. We both shared the same birthday, which was March the 8th. I often wonder how her only daughter felt, Marcella, because her mother never expressed these terms of endearment to her. Marcella would just stand to the side and watch her mother just kiss all over me. Miss Josephine Walker and my mother, Ernestine Tyler, were members of a small group of neighbors who every Saturday they got together at each other's house and had a great time. This particular Saturday, my mother was the hostess and our apartment filled up with people, just the smell of food, good music, and the adults took up the dining room, the kitchen, and the back porch, and the children had the front of the house. With all this going on, somehow I fell asleep, only to wake up to this burning sensation on my right arm. Marcella and my youngest brother, Jeffrey, were playing with matches. And the book of matches that Marcella had caught on fire, completely on fire, as she dropped it, not on purpose, it was an accident. She dropped it on my arm. I woke up screaming. I was in shock. And it was more not because of what just took place. It was because 3 years earlier, I had burnt myself in that same area with an iron. And so I believe I was reliving the trauma of the first incident. And I was so angry and I was so mad that I told myself I could never forgive Marcella for what she did to me. A couple months went by and we end up at Miss Josephine's home. And the children were told to go in the basement. And Marcella was so glad. She was so glad to see me. And I still was angry and I wanted revenge. And I remember telling her that I was going to get her and that I was going to make her look just like her mother. I was going to cut her from one side of her face until she would be her mother's twin. You see, Miss Josephine, before she met my mother, had been in a bar fight. And someone, this lady, took a knife and cut her on the side of her face. And this cut was from 6 to 8 inches long and about 1 inch wide. And I watched as Marcella, she just had this, her eyes was bugged. She could not believe what I had just said to her. And a still voice within me told me to turn around. And when I did, I saw Miss Josephine on top of the basement stair with a look of horror on her face and pain in her eyes. And I can feel her heart break. And I felt sick to my stomach, but I couldn't take back what I had just did. I was so embarrassed. I wanted to go home. I wanted to throw up. I couldn't look at her or Marcella. After that, our relationship was never the same. She never looked at me again. with that love. There were no more sloppy kisses on my cheeks, no unbearable bear hugs. It was just silence between us. But she never told my mother what I had said. And I did not know, even though I was sorry that I had hurt two people that I loved dearly, I didn't know how to apologize for my action. I didn't know how to move through the guilt of it. But it's still a powerful teaching tool for me even today, to cause no harm. As I went through life, I experienced many times of being emotionally, physically, and sexually abused. I was able to forgive the children or the teenagers who abused me because I knew somehow that they were acting out or reacting what had been done to them. The adults, both male and female, I was able to forgive them. But it was one person that I said I would never, never forgive. And that was my mother's boyfriend of 19 years. He first started molesting me when I was 11 years old. At the age of 13, it was just the two of us at home. And I tried my best to stay away from him. First, he tried to convince me to give him a massage, which I refused to do. Then he told me to go get him something to make him a lunch. And I was in the kitchen and we had this big log of bologna and I had this big knife and I'm cutting the bologna and he ran into the room, the kitchen, fell down on his knees and started kissing me in, between my legs, telling me how he wanted to make me a real woman and how he wanted to make me, he guaranteed I would feel good. And he just went on talking about what he was going to do to me. And just as his hands was making their way up through my gym shorts, I took that knife and I took it over my head and I was going to kill him. And just as I was bringing that knife down, I was about this much from his neck. He so happened to look up and he started screaming, "Oh God, oh God, oh Jesus," and he ran out of the house. Later on that evening, my mother received a phone call that he was in the hospital and that he had had a heart attack. And my family was crying and all that. And I sat there and I said, "Do you mean he's not dead? He didn't die?" And I walked out of the room. You see, I never told my mother about what was going on. I didn't share with my mom about him molesting me until I was like between 26 and 30 years old. But one of the things I promised, because I was more angry with him, not so much for violating me, but for destroying my family, for abusing my mother for 19 years. I witnessed many times when my mother's life was in the palm of this man's hand. And so I made a promise that whenever he died, I don't care where I was living in the world, that I would come back, not sit in the service, his funeral service, but I would wait as just before they closed the casket. And that I was going to walk down the aisle and I was going to make sure I had a mouthful of slop. I was going to spit in his face, knock his casket down. And when his body landed on the floor, I was going to stomp him. And that I carried for years. And yet I was able to forgive others, but that one person, I was seeking revenge. As I started becoming more and more aware of my spiritual walk, again, I was able to forgive myself and others. And one day I was in my 30s and I'm having this meditation and I'm laying in the floor and I'm thanking God and I'm releasing pain and forgiving people, forgiving myself. And I realized that the more that I released, the more God was able to pour more into my spirit. And so I'm feeling this incredible gift being downloaded into my being, the mercy and grace that God has for all of us, the unconditional love. And it was just filling me up and I was just crying over and over again, thanking God for this gift of unconditional love. And then God said to me, can you forgive him? And I promise you, that man's face filled up the whole room. And God kept saying, can you forgive him? Can you forgive him? Can you forgive him? And then I'm laying in the floor and it was just like the man's face is like this. And I said, yes, God, I can forgive him too. And from there, God made me realize, in my conversation with God, because I'm talking to God like I'm talking to you all. God shared with me, no matter what someone else has done to me, that I did not have the right to damn their spirit, tell them to go to hell, or wish them harm. God said to me that I knew God. I have this personal relationship with my Creator. And because I knew better, I knew the pain of causing other people harm, that I would be held accountable. And God also allowed me to see how those who have caused me pain were in vain themselves. And I realized that this grace, this mercy and grace, this unconditional love that God has given to me, it's not mine. It don't belong to me. It flows through me. So who am I to say who gets to experience the love of God, regardless of what they have done in life? They are people who are hurting, people who have made mistakes, and I cannot judge them. What I can do, and I may never understand their actions, and I know they should be held accountable for their actions, but I can't hate anyone, and I no longer have a desire to cause any harm. King was set. Man must evolve from all human conflict of method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. And to get to a place that you allow yourself to love in spite of yourself. Because we all got isms. We all have trials and tribulations. And we all gonna have times where we fall short. But I live with the fact that the Creator would never ask me to do for others what is not being done for me. And if God can see beyond my faults, all my shortcomings, and all my isms, surely I can offer the same to others. there is some good in the worst of us, some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have no desire in my life to cause any harm. And just because that's my choice, it does not mean that I have not, I will not harm others. But I am wise enough to own up and to acknowledge when I have caused harm. Thank you.
Priya, that was a powerful set of stories. A lot for us to assimilate. It's very rare that someone allows themselves to become that vulnerable, and it's truly a gift to do so when it allows the rest of us to have such deep learning through your experience. I really want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been amazing. I shared with you earlier, there have been times when I was going through the journey of forgiveness, and I do Reiki. As a child, I always had this gift with my hands. People would say I had healing hands, but sometimes that scared people, especially in the Black community. You go around laying hands, they, that's voodoo, what is that? So a friend suggests that I do Reiki, go get certifications. So I wouldn't scare people because the gift that was given to me naturally, there was no certification for it, right? And I remember when God told me that he wanted me to work on people who had abused me. And I resisted because I thought the memory of the abuse would come forth. And a couple of days went by, and this one particular person, I said, they really need your help. They really need you. I want you to go do this. And I found myself walking like that person for about a day. I'm like, what the? And so God was saying, in a way, that, hey, you won. You're the same. You know what I'm saying? We all are one. We all are connected. And so I have taken care of people who have misused me. And in doing that, I'm grateful. Now, I got to be honest. For a second, the memory do pop up, but I'm more connected with the fact that God has trusted me to do the work. And that person, their higher self, is allowing me to offer love, unconditional love to them. And I'm very conscious that in doing this work, I'm praying that the memory of what they did to me won't consume them. I don't want them to feel guilty. I don't want them to feel hurt. Because so often that's what happens when people do something, they can't find it to forgive themselves. So they do the same thing over and over again. That guilt, they locked into that guilt of allowing themselves to be disconnected from God, even for a little while. Because anytime we choose to misuse another human being, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially, sexually, we have disconnected from our God's source. And there's a sadness there.
Thank you for that. It strikes me that your stories, they go right to the heart, but that's essentially what Gandhi and King were about. I'm reminded of two things. One is what Jonathan Swift, the great satirist, Gulliver's Travels, A Modest Proposal, said, "We have enough religion to hate. We don't yet have enough religion to love one another."
Mhm.
And that, to me, is the heart of it. I mean, Gandhi essentially said, to practice ahimsa, to practice this love, we need soul power, satyagraha. The soul has to change. That's why I always think of him as Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul, and
Mhm.
Reverend Dr. King.
Mhm.
Reverend is, I mean, that's what we used to call our minister, Reverend, and reverence is the heart
Yes.
of religion. I came across, relation to this soul force, a quote by Dr. King, Reverend Dr. King, and I think it really relates to what you were saying. He says, "To our most bitter opponents, we say, we shall match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We shall meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we will continue to love you. We cannot, in all good conscience, obey your unjust laws, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. Throw us in jail, and we shall still love you. Bomb our homes and threaten our children, and we shall still love you. Send your hooded perpetuators of violence, and we shall still love you. And beat us and leave us half dead, and we shall still love you. Be ye assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. One day we shall win freedom, but not only for ourselves. We shall so appeal to your heart and conscience
Mhm.
that we shall win you in our process, and our victory will be a double victory."
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that,
You're very
because
welcome.
that's,
Thank you for
yeah, that's what it's all about. Even when Trump got in office, you know what the creator said to me? Don't worry about that, man. You need to worry about your trunkish ways. And then even with the virus being questioned, God was saying, well, what kind of virus are you putting into the world? What are you spreading? And so to constantly be asked these questions keep me in check, and understanding that we're dealing with the heart of people, not so much what they think they believe or what their culture is, uh, but the heart of people. I remember years ago, I met this man. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the show, All in the Family, right? He looked just like Archie Bunker. And I was working at the Enslavement Museum. And when I saw him coming in, I said, God, you ain't doing this to me today. I am not dealing with this man. So I was judging this man by somebody he looked like on TV. So when he came in, I told him I'm very honest. I said, hey, I was tripping because you looking like Archie Bunker. I don't want to deal with you. And he had a friend with him whose name was Richard. And the three of us had the most beautiful conversation about being better human beings. And the man that looked like Archie Bunker, his name was George, and he was about 70 years old at that time. And he shared with me that when he was 16 years old, he was from the South. He befriended two African American. They all worked in this restaurant. And he said he had never really been around Black people. They developed such a relationship. He said they fell in love with him and he fell in love with them. He couldn't wait to come to work every day. And in spite of his family still calling Black folks the N-word and everything else, he had a personal relationship with these two young men. He said the chef became very jealous of their relationship. So one day the chef says to the three young men, boys, I have 2 chicken dinners and a steak dinner. Now you know what the 2 chicken dinners for the Black young men. And George said he really wanted that steak because he came from a poor family and he really wanted that steak. But he also knew what the the chef was trying to do, divide and conquer, right? So George took it upon himself. He said to try to do the right thing. So he went, any, many, mighty, mo, catch the nigger by his toe. If he holler, let him go. And he did this, and one of the young African-American men ended up with a steak dinner. But he said he realized that they both had a look of shock on their faces. And one even had tears in his eyes. Finally, one said, "Do you know what you just did?" And George said he was so proud of himself because he did the right thing for the right reason, right? He said he even like patted himself on the back. "Oh man, I did right by this." And they said, "Do you know what you just did? What you just said?" And he went to repeat. And he said, "Oh my God. Oh my God." He said from then on, their friendship was never, never the same. That he had hurt two people that he loved dearly. But yet at the same time, and he's crying about this. He's 70-some years old, and he's crying about something that happened when he was 16. He said, yet he was grateful for that experience because he still could have liked two Black people and still be a racist. But because he saw how it hurt them and he had a personal relationship with them, it began to change his heart. And then he went on to say that Dr. King didn't change no laws, no rules or regulations. What Dr. King did was change the hearts of people. And that's the work. One-on-one. It's not my mission to change masses. I'm not into saving anybody because we can't save ourselves. But I can live my life in such a way that it inspires other people to want to be better human beings. It inspires others to empower themselves. And it inspires people to have a change of heart. And that's the work. That's the work right there.
You know, that story, Afriye, reminds me of a question that I had on this topic of choosing not to harm, that maybe many people here today can relate to. And that is, if it is the case that we have made that choice in our hearts not to harm others, as you mentioned, and then the story you gave just showed, we can still end up doing it.
Yes, yes.
So my question for just everybody who's there, you know, with us today is like, does that mean that when I do that, I'm a hypocrite? Or does it mean something different? Maybe about my evolution? I just wonder what everybody has to say about that.
I think it means you're human. You're human.
Renee,
Yes, Roger?
I think it's, I was listening to a video of Thich Nhat Hanh today. He was being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, and he was 85 years old. And she said, well, you believe in, you know, being at peace, being peaceful to everybody. She said, are you ever not peaceful? And he said, it's a practice. It's a practice. You make a decision. I'm sure Afriye has times, like she said, when she catches herself, like when that gentleman came in. It just, you know, we all have emotions. We all have thoughts. But how long do you hang on to them? How long can you get back to being centered? And everything Afriye is saying here is precisely what the Buddhists say, that, you know, the goal is to be centered at every moment, not to judge. Thich Nhat Hanh was saying that for every negative, there's a positive. You can't have a left without a right. This is the nature of things. People suffer, and you can't have joy without suffering. They come as a package. And I just was really thinking about something that Afriye said that really struck me about her Reiki and what she was doing with these other people. I think she's giving mental Reiki when she loves somebody who has hated her in the past or hates others. It's almost the same healing treatment that she's dispensing when she shows the love that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King displayed. And that's why he was enormously successful. And I think that's what we're called to do, is to practice and to forgive ourselves when we fall short.
Yes, 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 yes. I can remember someone was attacking me, and I mean, they was. Now I'm gonna share with you. I have a temper. I have a temper, and I know how to get you. I just choose not to operate with that, right? But sometimes it's very tempting because I watch people, and even as a child, I used to go after the bullies. And they would say, but my fight is not with you. And I said, but I'm fighting you. So I have a temper. I just choose not to operate in it. Anyway, someone was attacking me. It was a relative. And she was saying some stuff, and it was not, most of what she was saying was not true. And then she said, well, I remember you used to do this, this, and that, and that. So I am smart at the mouth, you know. And I said, well, I used to pee on myself too. But then I got potty trained. But if you give me a gallon of water and sit me in the rain and it's cold, I'm going to pee on myself again. And then it's going to come a time in my life where what they say we're twice a child, I'll probably pee on myself again. So she couldn't use that. But I was getting so angry that I wanted to go after her. And God says, this is a test. If you can hold your tongue for the next 60 seconds, you will pass the test. I had to hold my tongue. I had to physically hold my tongue because I wanted to, you know, I'm like, this person had been picking on me all my life, right? And so, and I had to physically hold my tongue, and I was quiet. And then after a while, they went, well, you know, I could be wrong. So I learned in my journey that I don't argue with people. Last time I really argued with someone, I was in a relationship. Boy, was that healing. He was one of my healers. So, but I learned that sometimes when we arguing with other people, we are saying we right, but we're not really thinking we are. Because when you argue with people, what was given to me is that don't waste your time arguing with people trying to prove that you're right. Let them waste their time trying to prove you wrong. But don't stand there and give up your energy like that. Move on, move on. And there are times when there's a disagreement, I will get quiet and I will say to the Creator, there's a fool between the two of us. And I'm just hoping and praying it's not me at this time. And I let go.
Thank
Afriye?
you, Afriye.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sarah, please.
Thank you for your stories. And it does feel like Reiki through story and through breath and word. And these feel like lessons of really encountering ourselves in each other and encountering parts of ourselves that are hard to face and encountering ugly things in others that ultimately, if we can use some deeper lesson and guidance from it, ultimately it opens our heart even more.
Yes.
And that's such a rich experience and life. And there is such that truth that we are human. And so we're going to encounter the missayings and the misdoings from ourselves and from others, and really to accept this time as humans and say, okay, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to, people aren't going to always treat me right. And to be able to actually use that to grow that is life. So thank you for really walking that path yourself and reminding and inspiring that just through the presence and time with you. It's really true.
Yeah. Like I said, I have a temper, and I was in a situation, people had lied on me, and I had it, and I was going to get them, y'all. It was wartime. And I was walking, I love my life. I tell people my life is like Forrest Gump, Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, and The Matrix, all mixed together, all these experiences, right? And so I was on my way to handle this. And this man, I believe in street angels, for lack of a better word, we would look at him as he was homeless, he was a bum. And he stopped me. It was my first time seeing him. He was walking down the street, and I noticed, I said, ooh, he's free, kind of thing. And when he got close to me, he said, don't let them take your light. I hadn't said anything to this man. He said, don't let them take their light. They don't know who you are. Take your light. They don't know who you are. Then he asked me, he said, what's your name? Because he would walk around with this big book, right? He said, what's your name? And I gave him Afriye, we can do this. And he looked at me and he said, no, your name. So I gave him my birth name, and he flips through this big book and he tells me, you're in the good book. I'm like, okay. And I was like, okay, who? I walked another 2 blocks and I was hot again, because I'm like, I did nothing wrong to these people. And this man rode by on a bike, and he said, hey, sister. I said, hey, my beautiful brother. He did a U-turn, and he said, they don't know who you are. I'm like, God, what kind of? So when I get there, they were waiting, and you can tell when people had discussed you before you came in the room, kind of thing. And they had their discussion with all they were going to say and accuse me of. And God, I was sitting on the opposite side of the room, and I heard, and God gave me the vision of Jesus, right? Sitting before his accusers. And God said to me, don't you say a mumbling word, because you haven't done anything wrong. And I sat there, and God said, look for me in each one of them. Look for me. And I sat there, and I promise you, just scanning back and forth. And over their heads, I could see little sparks of light. And I started smiling. I'm sitting there, I'm smiling. I'm saying to myself, I see you, God. I see you. It scared the mess out of them, because I'm sitting there smiling. They got up one by one and left the room. So I am always, regardless of the situation, looking for God in the midst of it. As I said before in this quote, there is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. And I don't even like to use the word enemies. I don't have enemies. I have great teachers.
Yeah, I'm going to call on Carol Ann. Thanks so much.
Oh,
Hey.
hey. So it's so wonderful to hear another human being, another woman that's kind of walking their own truth of enlightenment and becoming just so moved myself by my own journey. I just got back from Honolulu. I gave last weekend's gems and had a very spiritual experience with Renee and Cliff. And I came home with just a lot of hope for a situation that I'm currently going through, where I have the opportunity to ask for mercy and grace for somebody's life, essentially,
Mhm.
to be spared in a criminal situation. And in living my own truth of doing no harm to others, in listening to you live your truth in your belief that there's goodness in anything that's bad and the other way around, just really motivates my heart to believe that I'm on my own correct journey.
Yes.
I have this passage from Brene Brown that says, anger is a catalyst. Holding on to it will make us exhausted and sick. Internalizing anger will take away our joy and spirit. Externalizing anger will make us less effective in our attempts to create change and forge connection. It's an emotion that we need to transform into something life-giving. Courage, love, change, compassion, justice.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just very grateful for your time this evening.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Mom, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, you brought up a thought that had never occurred to me, if I understood it correctly. You said that if someone is harming another and doesn't find forgiveness in themselves for that, then they may repeat that over and over again. And that's a thought that had never occurred to me, and I thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. One of my violators I just saw them relive that demon over and over again. And seeing him defeated, the life that he felt because of that one mistake, that's all he could ever be. Because we do live in a society that we don't allow people, we hold things against them the rest of their lives. And I remember just seeing how broken his spirit was because he could not forgive himself for the action. So he just stuck in that spirit. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see that. And in doing this work, and like I said, I like to be honest. Growing up on the west side of Chicago, we didn't have a lot of interaction with white people. And when we did, it was a situation, because Chicago is still one of the most racist places there is. A lot of times people try to make racism just in the South, right? So our thing was we had to protect ourselves, and the situation was, we get you before you got us kind of thing. At some point in my 30s again, God told me that I was going to work with white people. That was mostly my work, to work with white people. And I said, God, I hate nobody. Never in my life have I hated anybody. But I don't need to be around white folks. I need to be right here with my people. I had no idea that God would be sending me to Selma. And the majority of my clientele are white universities and colleges that I get to do this work on being better human beings and to present the truth of the history of enslavement. That I am not going after their spirit. I'm not making you feel guilty, but making you, opening up your heart, okay? And what I discovered in doing this work, a lot of white people are feeling guilty. And I always say, let's talk about that. Because when you don't address guilt, it turns to other things. It turns to hate, racism, fear. So we have to talk about that, guilt. What I found to be true for me is that when you feel guilty, you find excuses for why you did what you did. So say, for instance, I was with Renee and I stepped on her foot. If I'm grounded and I am at a place that I take responsibility, oh, Renee, I am so sorry. I didn't intend to do that. But if I linger in guilt, I'm going to say she shouldn't have had her foot there. If it wasn't there, I wouldn't have stepped on it. And then I would continue to have that attitude that it is her fault that I stepped on her foot. That's guilt. But when you're grounded, you can say, I made that mistake. It was not my intention, and I apologize for it. So in my opinion, that's what we're dealing with here in the United States, is the spirit of guilt. And guilt will keep you in a cesspool for generations to come when you don't talk about the issues at hand. I have met a lot of people who are Trump supporters. They have the right to vote as they please. A lot of their conversation, some, not all now, some conversation I had with them did not make any sense to me. But I was able still to sit there and have the conversation. And God is always setting me up. A lady rented out by the River Center for Humanity. And God told me that morning, you know, they all going to be Trump supporters. And you're going to be the only Black person there. And when they came in, when you come to the center, it's me. It's my culture. And so they were a little thrown off that they saw all this African-American culture in this building, but they could not deny the love that they felt. So at first they looked, and then after a while, they just began to release. So the lady who was hosting the event got up on the stage and started talking about Trump was her president, and Trump this, and that, and da, 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 da. And I was sitting in a rocking chair, and God has an awesome sense of humor. And God said, how you feel about that? And I just kept rocking and said, oh, that don't have nothing to do with me. And at some point, somebody thought I was going to react to what she was saying. And they said, we better go. It's time to go. I just kept rocking. I kept rocking because God was showing me I have the opportunity to love. And they stayed there, they talked, and we had a good conversation. There have been people coming to the center who hate Trump's supporters. They hate them, they can't stand them, they're ignorant, they're this, they da, 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 da. And these peace-loving people, when they start talking about how they hate Trump supporters, I'm telling you, their faces begin to change, they screaming, and they yelling, and I had to stop this one young lady. And I said, you have to be very careful, because what you have just released in this center is ugly, absolutely ugly. It's evil. And you have to be careful that you do not become the very thing that you said you're fighting against. Where is the love? There are some things we are not going to understand because we have different life experiences. We say we're children of God, of higher power. must be willing to extend mercy and grace.
Roger, we're getting to the top of the hour.
I just wanted to know, Freya, what programs do you do at your place to express this? You said you work with university kids and others, and mostly white people. Do you have a format? Do you have different divisions that do things? What could you give us a sense so that we can think about what we could do here, maybe?
Okay, one of the things that I do is called Soul Prints of Our Ancestors and Ourselves. That's the reenactment experience. And so we take, regardless of your walk of life, you have the experience of being ambushed, kidnapped, turned against each other. We kidnap people from the group while you're not looking. They're taken into the facility and they think I'm getting ready to get rid of them, but they become the chosen ones. And as the chosen ones, they are given the job to, we ask them, are they willing to stand in the gap and imagine what those enslaved Africans went through and allow them to use them as a vessel and to cry out on their behalf. If you cannot connect with that, we ask, are you willing to stand in the gap for all of humanity and cry out to the heavens for mercy and grace? We're in a little bit of trouble right now. And if you cannot connect with those two things, we encourage you to shed your own tears, because we all have tears to cry. And so they're placed in the facility. We have a replica of a slave ship. So when the rest of the group come in, you hear familiar voices calling out your name as you're moving through the darkness, the Miller Passage. And then you go on the ship. And we talk about the spirit of those enslaved Africans, how in spite of the circumstances, their spirit was never broken, that they had a faith in God that was so deep that it got them through. And they knew that even if they would never know the joy of physical freedom again, that their children's children would be free. And that's why they were able to sing the songs of joy and gratitude. And we also stress that the suffering that they went through was not just for their descendants, but for all of humanity. This was a human tragedy. And that every lash that they took was for humanity. Every tree that hung, every body that hung from a tree was for the sake of humanity. And then you have arrived in North America, mother searching for her children. From the mother searching for her children, it's this powerful sage at 80 years old, still enslaved, still have shackles on. But she said two things she always knew in life. She wasn't nobody's slave, she wasn't nobody's nigger. And in spite of the shackles that they had on her, that she was free, because they couldn't put any shackles on her heart, her spirit, and her dreams. And then she challenged you by asking you, because we all have shackles. We all have shackles. Those shackles was waiting on us the moment we were born. Our family was saying, we don't talk to this people. You can't talk to them. What religion? Oh, you got to be Baptist. You got, the shackles. And we didn't know any better. We took them. We started wearing them. And then as we started going through life, we started collecting more shackles for ourselves, still not knowing any better. So she challenged you to drop them. But she warns you, there will be times when you will go back and get them because you're comfortable with them. They are a part of you. And then she asks you that before you close your eyes each night, ask yourself these questions. How did I use my freedom today? Or perhaps you need to ask, who auction block did I stand on? And why did I see so little value in who God says that I am? And so we have to do a debriefing because personal issues do come up. But we established the fact that it's a safe place. There will be no arguing, no debating. We would respect everybody's life experiences. and with the understanding that we all are ignorant to a certain point, right? We're going to sit here and have heart-to-heart conversations so that we all can be better human beings. And we celebrate. After we do that, we do a peace call, I love me. We encourage people to dare to see the greatness within themselves, and knowing that we all have the power and the responsibility to make a difference in the world, that we have the responsibility to speak life wherever we go. We have the responsibility to reach out in the spirit of love, to reach back with compassion, and choose to see the beauty of God in all people, in spite of ourselves. And so we do make sure that we have honest conversations, and people are free to get in touch with me afterwards. I received letters of how people have taken from this experience, went home and had discussions with their families, and they're better human beings. So whenever you come and visit, we always, when you walk through our doors, we say to you, welcome home. This is the place where you can come and just be human.
I'll be there.
All right. And I love cooking too now. I'm going to fatten you up while you're here.
Can I ask for someone to give Afriye a vote of thanks for all that she's shared with us today?
It was an amazing experience. Thank you so much, Sister Afriye, for giving us so much of your life story, and just not just your life story, but that unconditional love that's flowing through you. You know, I think that it's really touching. It's really powerful to hear these words spoken, because a lot of times we might hear things, but once we see the words spoken by somebody that we believe, trust, love, all that kind of thing, it means a lot more. So those are the type of examples that we all need to see in life, and I think you embodied it wonderfully. And thank you so much for taking the time, for connecting with all of us, and for being who you are to help us all be better versions of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
And to all of you who attended tonight, thank you so much. It was really wonderful to have all of you here listening so deeply. And I know that we'll all take things with us that we might not have spoken tonight, but I know that we will take things forward from Afriye's presentation. So thank you so much again, Afriye, and we'll see
Thank
everyone
you.
soon.
Peace.
Thank
Peace.
you.
Thank you, Renee.